Welcome, my name is Jeremy Schmidt. I'm the research and ground supervisor here at Delights Nursery, Juniper Level Botanic Garden. And today I'm going to talk about why I and Juniper Level Botanic Gardens, why we're mad about Mangave. Mangave, that's actually, it's such a new plant. It's hard to even know where to begin because we just began. Mangave was a term that was just coined in 2005. By Tony Avent and his friends at Delights Nursery, as the idea that an Agave and a Manfreda would cross became apparent. Initially it happened in a nursery. There were some, I think it was noticed, it may have happened in nature as well. But again, it was all so new, and we didn't even know what we were looking at during those years. But 17 years later, 18 years later, something like that, Delights Nursery, we have trialed around 1,700 different clones of Mangave. We're doing a lot of breeding here between our own Agaves and Manfredas, as is a place in Michigan called Walter's Gardens, who's really taken the lead. We share pollen with them, they share plants with us so that we can test how their seedlings are doing. But what I want to do is walk around. I want to look at some Agaves, look at some Manfredas, and just to see how they've crossed, and how Mangave as an intergeneric hybrid is the best of both. So we're in the Plant Delights crevice garden, or at least the one little part of it here. And so this is a pretty classic Agave. It is an interspecific hybrid of an Agave, but it is fully what is known as Agave. And this little guy here, this spotted thing, this is a Manfreda. Now it's certainly a selection. It wouldn't normally look like this too much in the wild, but Manfredas have, in many cases, they have spots. They have an undulate margin in the case of Manfreda undulata, this wavy edge here. So really cool spots, not so pokey. And then you've got Agave, which is rather pokey, but it's larger. It doesn't necessarily go dormant in the winter, or at least it doesn't die back to the ground if it's winter hardy. It has a giant flower when it flowers, and that amazing architecture that they have. It's extreme drought tolerance that it has. And so if you put those two together, you get the best of both worlds. You get a plant that, some of which are winter hardy, that can give you that a patterned look like you have with those spots. It's not so pokey, but it looks just like a big Agave. And one other cool thing about Mangaves is that they bloom more quickly than Agave, but even though the rosette that blooms will die, it will offset just after it flowers. And so A plus B equals Mangave, which we're about to walk past and look at some. So this is a hardy Agave that we sell. It's called Falling Waters, Mangave Falling Waters, and it's just finished blooming. But you can see it has about an 8-foot tall flower stalk, and in the next few months you'll see that it'll start to grow a new plant from the base. And then this rosette will die. You can cut the flower stalk off. It did not set seed. But again, it blooms in about 4 years from a 1-quart pot. So Agaves are known as century plants. In this climate, often they'll bloom after about 10 years. Manfredas are going to bloom maybe 1 to 2 years for each rosette, maybe 3 years from a single rosette. And you put the two together, it's 4 or 5 years. A Mangave will often bloom from that 1-quart pot size in 4 or 5 years. So I mentioned earlier we've grown about 1,700 different clones of Mangave here at Plant Delights Nursery in the last 17 years, 16 years. But this is pretty cool. So a lot of this, the new breeding, is breeding for just insane patterns, even if they're very small plants. So this has a red leaf almost. The spots are so close together that it nearly appears red. This is called Mangave coffee jitters. It's a good name. I know the feeling. But it's a pretty small one. This did survive 11 degrees in the ground this winter. I think that it died back to the ground, but here it is. It looks very good. Also, some Mangave can take maybe just a little bit of partial shade. So I believe that they're all good in full sun, but a little part shade and they'll be just fine. Here's another one called Dreadlocks. This one also survived 11 degrees and is coming back very nicely. So in Juniper Level Botanic Garden, out of those 1,700 different kinds of Mangaves that we've trialed over the years, we have almost 100 clones in the garden now that survived that 11 degrees that we had last winter. So there's more and more that are showing that they can be quite hardy, and we'll look at a few more. Here's another Mangave Falling Waters. This one has bloomed in the past, and you can see that after blooming, the offsets have now taken over, and it's a striking plant. Now, from a gardener's perspective, you can dig up the offsets and try to keep just a single rosette, or just let it clump like this. But again, it's just a great looking plant. It's not as pokey as it looks. It can poke you, but not too bad usually. And this one will probably bloom again, maybe with multiple stalks, in the next 2 to 3 years. So here I am in our display of Mangaves. The majority of these are not going to be winter hardy in Zone 7B. However, Mangave make a very easy full sun container plant as well. So that's just something I hear a lot. A lot of people ask, I've got a container, it's in full baking sun. What can I grow here? And Mangaves are a perfect option. I know that although we don't have this one for sale right now, here in the next few weeks, I believe at the end of September, we'll have these available for sale again. But isn't this cool? I believe that this has Agave okahui in it as a species, and I don't know what the other Manfreda parent is, but this is called Mangave praying hands. Again, not really winter hardy here, but what a cool potted plant. Again, very easy to keep alive, so you can bring these inside, reduce the amount that you water them in the winter, and they can survive inside through the winter. They can survive in a garage through the winter. They just their metabolism just kind of shuts down. So a few of these are hardy. Right now, Plant Delight sells 18 different kinds of Mangaves. So you can pick and choose what's right for you. Some of which, I think 1 or 2 of those, including Falling Waters, are winter hardy in the ground here in 7B Raleigh. Again, very drought tolerant, including in a pot. They need to be watered in a pot, but they're not going to wilt and look bad right away like other plants will. I believe that all of the genetics in Mangave are North American genetics. So even though these plants look very crazy, they are all from North America in some way.
When you bring them in for the winter, you don't water them as much when they're
No, there's no reason to water them as much when they've gone dormant. So yes, when you bring them in the winter, reduce the amount of water that they're given to where, I guess it's one of those things, I would say that it's a little too dry for a plant to grow, but not totally bone dry. And if you can do that, then you can just easily keep them alive, even in a dark place, because they'll just kind of stop growing. And then bring them back out when it gets warm again in the spring.
Okay, can I ask a question? You guys
Sure.
are doing a video.
No,
right?
come on in.
Okay.
What you got?
I just wanted to ask you if I didn't put them in the garage in the wintertime, if I just went ahead and put them in the ground, do you have to cover them, do you think, if it starts getting down? We're in South Carolina, so we don't get quite as cold
Okay.
as you guys get up here.
You'll have, in South Carolina, let's say you're in an 8A.
Yeah,
We're in an 8A.
You'll
It's
have
Crete, yeah.
you'll have a few more options with what is hardy in the ground.
Okay.
However, many of these Mangaves are not going to be winter hardy even in an 8A situation.
Okay.
I believe that as the breeding work continues forward, again, this has only existed. Mangave, the intergeneric hybrid, we've only known about this, and we only started breeding this group of plants 17 years ago. And as I'd said before, the word Mangave wasn't coined until 2005.
Oh, I didn't know that. So Mangave means what? That it's more adaptive to other zones?
Mangave means it's half Manfreda, half Agave.
Okay.
It's an interspecific, or rather an intergeneric hybrid. Although one could say it's interspecific now, the latest taxonomy work is putting Agave and Manfreda in Agave, in the genus Agave. So right now we just call them Mangaves without the X.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so we probably could put them in our outdoors, and they
They're-
like full sun all
Full sun, they can get dry. Normal garden soil is fine. Again, check, as we sell them, we say what their winter hardiness is, especially if we know. And if we don't know for sure, we say we're guessing.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
let us know.
Because I hate getting home and having something die early. It upsets me.
That's right. So there are, again, many of these, even if they're not winter hardy for a Mangave would mean that they died to the ground, but maybe they'll come back from the ground.
Oh, okay, so just leave them alone, even if they
Yeah.
look like all of the leaves have
Yeah.
gotten.
But something like, and I keep referring to Mangave falling waters, it is a solid 7B hardy plant. We have hit, it got to 11 last winter, and mine at home didn't get any leaf damage whatsoever. It was like, oh, it was cold. Okay, I didn't realize that. Didn't get the memo, I guess. And so some of these Mangaves are very, very foliage hardy as well. So I would recommend start with those. I find them very beautiful. And then try some of these ones that are not as winter hardy, and put them somewhere. I would recommend protecting them in the winter. Like I said, bring them inside if you can. They grow just fine as a house plant, and again, they're not super pokey, and so they work. And they don't need all the light in the world inside. Just don't
really?
water.
Yeah.
Just don't water them as much.
Oh, okay.
The-
if you're going to, okay.
So you're not trying to grow
Let 'em
them.
get good and dry. Maybe
Yeah.
Give them
Once every couple of weeks, give them a little water.
Okay, just
Inside,
A little bit.
yeah. You don't want to soak the pot in
Okay.
when they're not actively growing.
Okay, gotcha.
Mhm.
I see.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. What's your name?
My name is Jeremy.
Jeremy. And do you have any YouTube videos that we can look at? Does Plant Delight have
We
YouTube
do.
videos
Check
that
out
we
our Plant Delights YouTube channel. It's
Okay.
called, I think it's the Gardening Unplugged channel.
Okay, Gardening
And
Unplugged.
we have 50 or maybe 100 videos on there now.
Good. We'll have to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Gardening Unplugged.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.